Hello, everybody. Welcome back to this week's Rams Review podcast. I've got some new microphone equipment, and I am joined by Chris Holt. Chris, how are you, mate?
Good evening, Jack. Very well, thank you. And there's me on my works earphones. So you're the posh bloke today.
Yep, I know. It's all got a bit awry, hasn't it? But hopefully this sounds all right as I figure this out over time. Do leave feedback below, see what we can adjust, and give me suggestions for sound effects, because I've got about 30 spots here on this soundboard for various different things. So leave them below. I have recorded some sheep when I was in Shetland, so I'll get them on there, and we'll come up with some more things. But yeah, I mean, where should we start, Chris? I guess there's only one place to start, really, and that is at the Valley on Saturday. Derby defeated 2-1 by Charlton Athletic. What were your thoughts on Saturday?
Oh, Jack, we only got half hour, so I'll make it brief. I was optimistic of what I saw from the start of the game. There was an intensity. John wants us to become the most pressing team in the championship, certainly from the front. And I saw that. My big concern, and it was great to see the development of partnerships like Morris and Schmodix. You know, Derby were lining up as almost like a 5-3-2, but there were certain elements of that first half where I wasn't quite sure whether that was a 5-3-2 or was it a 4-3-3 or was it a 4. I just almost felt that we were adapting our formation and our processes of the play against what was coming up against us. But it was almost, you know, let's be honest, when we saw the likes of Schmodix pull up pre-game and everyone's worried, and then he came out the tunnel, and then we saw a back five that included Taylor, Forsyth and Ward, you know, and then Langas and Sanderson. That there's clearly a situation there where none of the five have played together before at this level. And then Mao only got onto the bench, which I think, to be fair, if a system's been preached and practiced throughout the week and Mowat comes in at a late stage, I get that. But yeah, first 30 minutes, great goal, deserved. Travis was in control, and then obviously Nathan Jones gets him in at half time, and well, I'll let you, sort of an analyst expert that we have here on the show, what happened in the second half, Jack, because I could have my opinion on it, but I'll let you do the more professional, upbeat version.
Well, okay, I've got to be upbeat now, have I, Grant? No, I think the point about the shape was really interesting, because I think I changed my mind about 4 times during that game as to what I was going to record it as. I think in the report, which I will link below, because, you know, it wouldn't be a podcast if I didn't do a shameless plug for the website, would it? I think I opted for, let me just check what I opted for at the end. I called it a 3-4-2-1, but it was really 3-4-2-1/3-5-2, come 4-2-3-1. It was a little bit all over the shop. It's one of those things. There was clearly a method to it, but it's one of those that was pretty hard to categorize. I think really that first half, there were 15 excellent minutes where Joe Ward got space and everything sort of went for Derby. They got the goal, it's great link up and so on. And second half, they just lost that. I mean, even the final part of that first half, I think when Nathan Jones switched the wings for Carlton Grant and Tyrese Campbell, then that was probably the biggest turning point in that game. I mean, Tyrese Campbell, Derby were undone by exactly the type of player we lack at the moment, exactly the type of player that John Eustace must want. He must want a couple of these quick, direct, exciting wingers who can make things happen, who can just be constant nuisances. I mean, you know, even in the second half when Ward and Langas were doubling up on him, he had their number, really. I mean, neither of them are really right backs, and I think in those right back areas it showed, didn't it? So I think that was a problem. And you know, the free kick that Grant takes, Campbell wins that. It's cleared at first, but it's worked straight back out to him, and it's, to be fair to him, an inch perfect ball onto the head of Lloyd Jones, you know, from about 3 yards out. I mean, if he misses that, then it's this is the season contender. I would have been thinking at the time until I saw the Barry Bannon miss. I will say that. I mean, John Eustace said to Radio Derby, we should be defending that, no problems at all. And I don't think anybody can disagree. The interesting dynamic going forward then was when Szmodics went off, Bobby Clark became that free central player. And he did, again, he was better there. So it's going to be about that balance. But Charlie Taylor, to be fair to him, had a great second half, really, in terms of a couple of good challenges and goal line clearances. There was that great block in the first half. He was much better than he was against Lincoln. But then ultimately, Fraulo gifts the ball to Ranky Costello, Lee earns away, 3 white shirts press him, Campbell's on hand again because of course he is. He's got the legs to get up there and pop up. He just shifts the ball slightly to his left, and it's a lovely finish. From there, Derby finally makes more subs, 4 subs at once. And yeah, there's a flurry of late chances, but really, that was probably too little too late. And you wonder, does Eustace need to either trust his subs more? I'm sure we can come to this. Or does he need to bring in subs that he can trust more? It's one of the two, I think. But second half, really, I think it came from that switch for that direct runner to be attacking what turned out to be Derby's more vulnerable side. I think we probably thought that would be Taylor and Forsyth, but defensively they kind of held their own sitting back as much as the pace wasn't there. On the right, where you'd expect more mobility, it wasn't there. And then maybe not as well. Ward is not a defender, is he? He's not a right back. He's said as much throughout his career. And yeah, I think Campbell kind of just had them a few times, and there we are. It's bizarre. What I will say is I think Mowat looked neat and tidy when he came on. Again, helped that bit of control, but yeah, it's a frustrating one because yeah, you think we should have made those changes earlier, and we needed Tyrese Campbell.
I'm not sure the right substitution came on, Jack, is my honest answer. I understand that Mowat came on for his skill set, but you're replacing a number 10 with fundamentally a holding playing midfielder. I would have put Ryan Brewster on if it was me at that particular stage at 54 minutes. Obviously, we conceded the goal at 61, so clearly there was an issue out there. There was a disjointing. The whole system became a little bit disjointed. I'm not sure that everyone was on board with what they were responsible for. You know, you're taking a slot out the third part of the system and then replacing it with someone who sits in the second part of the system. And then expect Clark, who's been nowhere near the front line all game, to then just quickly adapt. And I just thought it was the wrong way around. I thought if Brewster was fit to be on the bench, he could have easily given us 35 minutes. If not Brewster, is there an argument that Corey Blackett-Taylor could have come on and we adapt something around his pace? I think it showed the frailties at the moment that we have as a unit, and in a strange way, the frailties that perhaps John Eustace have in the confidence of what he has. So yeah, and I think that from that, when you go through that 17, 18 minute lull after the goal, where, like you said, there was a lot of communication issues. The heading goal, for a start, I don't think Eustace is going to blame Zetterström for the error. I think it is Zetterström's ball to gather, but he's not going to potentially slate his goalkeeper, who, let's be honest, in an ideal world will probably be sold in the next week for top dollar. And if his manager is seen on the radio or on the television the previous weekend saying he was absolutely shocking and he was responsible for both goals, then we're knocking ourselves in the face, aren't we, by removing value off what we want. I think the second goal is just a calamity of errors. But I think it highlighted, Jack, and I'll put this back to you, that I don't think Langas is the same player that we had in his prime last season. Now, I don't know whether his pre-season hasn't brought him up to 100% speed. As we spoke in a previous podcast, when you are working out in sessions at the World Cup pre-game, they are not as intense as a pre-season of the Championship. They are more structured. The strategy, his weather taken on board. Everything is at a different pace and at a different level. He's come back to Derby with a 2-week break, although he did come back in earlier. He did openly say that he came in 2 days earlier to get cracking. But I don't think Langas is quite up to the sharpness that we need. And I think it was a bit of a shock to him that he was. I don't know what you think, Joe. I thought he was a yard short of pace. The positive from that was Taylor played well, and he showed us that he can be a good cover for that position. I don't think he'll be a cover for centre half, as we saw against Lincoln. I just don't think it suits him. And then the other question I'll fire back to you is Sanderson. He looks void of confidence and unsure of his partnership with Langas, where most of his partnerships in the past have been with Clark. So if you add all of these equations into the final sum and then throw in Joe Ward, who, let's be honest, has never been much of a defender anyway, and then Fozzie being Fozzie, I think we were on a hiding to nothing if things weren't organised at the time of the Schmodics, certainly at the time of the 61st minute equaliser. But to me, the Schmodics injury going off at that time, a critical time, 54 minutes is a difficult time to adjust. It allows 40 minutes left in the game. I just thought Derby never really got their hands or the heads around what was required.
No, absolutely. I mean, to go back to Sunder Longos, if I'm going to Norwegian it up for the sake of it, I think, I go back to post-Lincoln, and John Eustace said that we're getting players back. That was Langas's third game. He said second, but it was his third. I think he'll agree that he wasn't up to speed, and quite rightly so, because the game time he's already had is hardly anything. And I think, that's him defending his player, giving us the reasons why he wasn't up to speed, but he's admitting that he wasn't there. And I would argue that he's, you're right, he still wasn't there. We've got to hope that he can rediscover that pace, because I think that's a big asset for him. But does he need a few more minutes of the under-21s or something? I don't know, but he didn't look sharp. Joe Ward is not that right back. You've got Max Johnston on the bench there, who, again, Ward did well creatively in Derby's best period, but looked leggy as it went on. Should that change been made earlier, perhaps, for some fresher, younger players to come in down the flank? I mean, Blackett Taylor, another one, looked bright when he came on. Did Derby need that directness? I think, going back to the point around Schmodics, it's so pertinent because Clark is being asked to be higher than you want him to, albeit he's probably happy to have that space to roam across the pitch. What I would say with the Mowat change is Mowat himself did all right in terms of, I'd say, it's neat and tidy. He also created the joint most chances of any player on the pitch, 3, alongside Bobby Clark. So you saw flashes of what he's in the team for. He can create from deep, grand. But you've got to then balance that with the right players around him, and that clearly wasn't there. Because I mean, there were points where Fraulo was basically playing up front with Carlton Morris, whose name nearly escaped me there for some reason. And Oscar Fraulo is again meant to be that sort of deeper kind of playmaking, technical midfielder. He's not really a 10, let alone a kind of second striker. And I think we saw that in his positioning. I mean, take the eventual winner and the way he gives the ball away, for example. So yeah, can Brewster come on earlier? I mean, he played. If he can't come on at 54 minutes, then could he come on at 70? Because he played 20 minutes against Port Vale in that behind closed doors friendly. And even then, if he comes on there, it's 1-1. Do you maybe manage to push again for a winner yourselves? Whereas Derby seemed to sit in and think, oh right, we'll manage to see this through, and basically only broke glass for the bench when they didn't, when they were behind and they needed something to get back into it. And by that point, yes, Carlton Morris has a handful of chances at the end. There's Blackett Taylor's great running cross, a nice cross from Johnston, and that ball from the inside left from Mowat right at the end as well. But yeah, you just think, actually, it showed that we need reinforcements again, I feel like we're all fed up of saying it, but actually, even if some of the players aren't necessarily up to the standard that John Eustace wants or thinks he's going to get, sometimes you just need to change things to have that fresh perspective. But it's about changing things with the right profiles, and that Schmodic's change really wasn't, was it? It altered the shape and the whole system too much.
Yeah, and to add to that, if you actually look at our bench for the game, I was really surprised. Again, he bypassed Eames, who has energy, pace, and he has power. And then you've got another number 10, Philip Babia. Now, he was brought in from Patabon fairly early. We got him in Austria, so he's been with the team nearly a month, pretty much. Didn't get any minutes against Charlton. Now, I'm all for bringing someone into the club and understanding of English football, etc., etc. But the game wasn't that of a fast pace and of a end-to-end basketball type game. It was quite structured even when Schmodix went off. I just think that he's looked over his shoulder, and again, he's lost confidence in bringing on two options. Again, you talk about Max Johnson. Could have Johnson come on at right back and Ward go into the midfield and support with those whip crosses? Corey Blackett-Taylor, comes on at 83. If he's not the future, fair enough. But while you've got him, use him. I'd almost sometimes think, do managers do it? And I know they probably don't, but do they do it as almost a protest of, look, this is where we're at, this is what I have? Because this team on paper still is far stronger, as everyone keeps saying, than what we started off with last year. But the fundamentals of the formation and the pegs in right holes, just to me, didn't make sense second half. You're 1-0 up, you're away from home, you're limited with what you have. But when your best player goes off, and I do believe that Schmodix is, I said this pre-season and I've said it on many podcasts I've been a guest on, I do think Schmodix is our key man this year. He's got a lot to prove in his career, but he's settled. Injuries aside, of course. But I just don't understand why Salverson goes on for Travis at 84 when you've got Eames, who's got bundles of energy. You've already got Mowat on there. You've already got Morris on there. Why do you need Salverson, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems with the system when Schmodix went off was that Morris was the only out. Now, if you want another out, yeah, that could be a big man to lump it up to and hope he can flick it on. But Salverson isn't as good at that as Morris. And what Morris thrives off is having runners around him in that scenario. So an Eames or a Bilbia even would be a better shout. I think going back to when Schmodix went off, because I think this is where we're going to keep going back to, it's kind of where the game started to turn properly beyond just Campbell, is I think you make two changes at that point. I think if Schmodix has to go off, you bring on a Brewster, an Eames, a Bilbia, and then if you want to bring Mowat on, you take Fowler off.
Agreed.
I think that's the crux of the matter, is that bringing Mowat on at that point was not a bad idea. It's the fact he came on for Schmodix and it altered the system. I think that was my frustration, and I think that's what we saw. I mean, I think you're right as well in terms of the sort of protest feel. I mean, I'm sure that's not what managers are doing in that scenario. They, of course, want to win. But yes, Corey Blackett-Taylor clearly isn't the future for John Eustace. I go back to the pre-match, and he was talking about not really having any wingers at the club, and I thought, oh well, you've got one who you then mentioned straight after that, John. To be Corey Blackett-Taylor when he hears that, I don't know what's going through his head. Does he already know he's on the way out? Probably. But in the scenario you're in, when you've got the squad you've got and you're in that match, in that situation, you can't afford to think, well, he's not going to be here next week. Because it's a bit, at that point, you're in the same position that an international manager is in, where you're working with what you're working with. Or that Eustace was in when he came in at first. And he had the players he had to work with. and he had to get the best out of them, get the best dynamic. So he played Marcus Harness up front, and we got results. You can't tell me that Corey Blackett-Taylor in his natural position is a more awkward fit in that system than trying to play Marcus Harness up front was 18 months ago. You know, it's one of those things where, yeah, he's not necessarily the level that we want, but would he pose more threat than what came on or what was there before he came on? Yeah, you would. And actually for Derby, it's, you know, we do need those reinforcements. We need a couple in this week. But I think maybe the substitutions just meant that Derby let the game get away from them a bit.
Yeah, I also think that the formation, Jack, and obviously we're going into analytics now and all sorts. I just thought the formation had the tweak available when Schmodic went off. In some ways, sometimes injuries can help a scenario and make you make a decision you're unsure about and may well be thinking about anyway. And I just wonder whether we could have gone a flat back four and pushed Ward up and brought, like I said, brought on Bruce early, brought on Bill Beer, removed Fowler from the equation. Could we have gone 4-5-1 and brought Blackett to? I just think, to me, there's so many more probabilities and better scenarios that Eustace could have gone down than what he actually did. And I wasn't quite sure until the game stretched out when we threw on the kitchen sink at 83 minutes. I wasn't quite sure what Eustace was actually, his intentions were when he brought on Moet. I was a little bit bewildered on, because clearly Travis was getting leggy. Clark was all of a sudden going from being in a deep formation position to then be asked to go literally top third. Now, for anyone who plays football or analyses football or coaches football, you know and I know it's not as easy as shoving a centre half who's 6'6" up top and hope to come onto a cross. Asking someone who's been asked to play deep and start play flowing and integrate and connect players to then become an outlet at the top and almost like a second striker, it just doesn't work like that. And as skillful as Bobby Clark is, he hasn't had the best of starts this season. Now, there could be many reasons why that is, Jack, and there could be a whole debate on that. Is he starting slow because he's just getting familiar with the area? He's now settled. He's moving up. There's all kinds of reasons why he hasn't started quick this season compared to, say, when he came in last season. But he just doesn't look himself, because I think Bobby Clark against Lincoln, he was out of position. I think he played on the left. He's not a wide field player from that particular part of the pitch. We know that. We know he wants to play at the 10 from the off, but then you've got your dilemma of Schmodic, Bobia, Brewster to some extent, although you could say Bruce is probably a 9. So then is he then being sort of put into a holding role with Travis to link up just to get him on the pitch? I just think the whole, we've got a new coach as well in Ben Wilkinson. Has he got input into these adjustments at 54 minutes, Jack? Was it purely Eustace's decision, or is he actually asking Ben Wilkinson to have a fair input? There's all these questions, not on the pitch, but off the pitch, But the sad thing is about it all is that I don't think we were bad. I just think we wasn't good enough, or we just didn't have the tactical prowess and, I don't know, decision-making at the right time to come away with a point, Jack. I don't know what your thoughts are, but I honestly thought that had a draw written all over it. We could have shut shop at 61 even.
Yeah, no, it did. It felt that way. It's one of those where I guess maybe that was part of the logic for the Moet substitution, try and control things a bit more, keep the ball and just hope that you don't get picked off on the counter. But obviously, if there was one thing they were going to do, well, two, it was set pieces and counter-attacks at that point, given who was shining for the Charlton on that pitch. So it does seem bizarre. I think on Bobby Clark, I mean, he, on the one hand, he wants to play as a 10. He's also previously suggested he is a midfielder and he's happy to play as an 8 and he wants to be that bit more involved. So I do just wonder whether we could see that with Smodics as effectively almost a striker next to Morris, and some sort of 4-4-2 when you get wingers in, with Smodics just off. But yeah, as a forward, so then it's not a role for Bobby Clark as we saw when he's playing in that 10. The fact those questions are there makes you think, brilliant player, glad we've got him. Where does he fit, as you say? Or could Derby look at going narrow? I don't know. There's so many questions when there's clearly so many players still to come in. But at the moment, yeah, it just felt that little bit disjointed after Smodics went off. And as I say, really, there were 15 excellent minutes where Ward got some space, got some balls in, and that Morris Smodics dynamic is what will fire Derby up the league if something does make us finish in that top 8, for example. The goal, I think, was a great example of that. Smodics with a nice run pass into Morris, lovely, cute little flick, good bit of hold-up play, and Smodics with a neat finish. I think we could see a lot of that again. Morris is that perfect foil for Smodics and could hopefully then add some more goals back to his game as well. But we know he's so much more than goals. Yeah, where does Bobby Clark fit in? So if you think in Derby's best 11, I mean, depth is great, but if we think about the best 11, you're going to have Agyemang on the left when he's fit again. Someone else is going to have to come in on the right. And then you're going to play two of Travis, Mowat and Clark. And whichever of those duos you pick, they've all got quite different dynamics. So it's definitely a curious one, unless we were to see Smodics in that sort of inside right again, as that second striker, but from that inside right with a kind of midfield trio behind. I don't know. It just feels like there's so many more questions than answers. And we do have to remember this is game one. There are lots of signings to come, we hope. But yeah, there's definitely a few kind of systemic, not necessarily huge, glaring kind of issues as such, but questions to be answered and things to be ironed out. And we almost need them to come out against Cardiff with what they think this system is meant to be, with something a bit clearer, to just effectively clarify it for us. Because right now, it just, as I say, to put that into one formation, I struggled. And I always think either my reading of that game was awful, or there was a few different changes there and something's not quite right. And if we can't pick it up from seeing it from the stands, or for a decent vantage point, or from the TV cameras, then the players have been trained on it, but you've got to think it must be more difficult for them than an obvious 4-4-2 or 4-3-3, right? And does it just need that? Maybe it just needs that bit more training. Maybe they just need time. But the difference this season, of course, is that the international break, whilst longer when it comes at the end of September, is later. So it's not a case of get to the end of the transfer window and then you've got 2 weeks to work on things with the new lads. We've got to get through 7-8 games before we get to a break, albeit a nice big one. So I think that will alter the dynamics as well. And I think we've probably underplayed that in kind of all our build up to the season. That's going to be fascinating. So yeah, there's definitely things to be ironed out. But you just feel as though maybe at 1-0 up, Derby need to be that little bit bolder. Do we need to back ourselves a bit more? And was that where it started to go wrong in summary?
Yeah, no, I think my final thoughts on it before we talk about obviously the transfer news or the rumours that were swirling around today regarding our goalkeeper, is that Derby have brought Mowat in clearly to be a possession team. You wouldn't bring that kind of player, and it proved that with a 55% possession percentage. And we looked very comfortable on the ball, certainly when he got a grip of the game. My concern was when you see Travis only lasting for 83 minutes, you've got to ask yourself who's going to slot in that position to allow Mowat still to keep control of the game. Because Mowat, yes, wants possession of the ball, and yes, he wants to distribute and get things going, but he's still going to need protecting, and he's still going to need someone to do all the dirty stuff to get the ball to him. So if you're losing your fundamental player who does that job at 83 minutes, and the average game length now in the Championship is 97, there's a 15-minute potential void there where as we've seen many times, Jack, last year, and no doubt we'll see this year, where games will change. Just finally on that, regarding going forward, I think that you look at the likes of Cardiff who are coming on Saturday, and we'll briefly touch on them at the end of the show. They again are a possession team. They played possession football in League One and got back into the Championship doing that way. So it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic works of what we've just discussed on Saturday against a team probably opposite to Charlton in a way that likes to be on the ball, where Charlton clearly wanted to be almost like the Derby County was last year, and finally on the Cardiff connection, because they were next opponents. I thought Wrexham, of what I saw, Wrexham were clearly the classic team that we were last year, where you take on everything that's being thrown at you, and you wait and are patient and look for the gaps and the situation to arise in front of you where you can punish. We can't do that at the moment, Jack, because we just haven't got the power or the pace to be an counter-attacking football team. And that does concern me, that at the moment we do have a very limited plan A. And at the moment we're going to have to stick to plan A, however much we like or not like it, and see if he finds the right scenarios to get through what will be a tricky 2 or 3 week period. So we'll leave it there, Jack. Sort of talk to us about the news this afternoon regarding the so-called links to our number one goalkeeper.
Yes, so the ins and outs of this are effectively that Fabrizio Romano has tweeted, and he has tweeted that Monza have made a bid for Jacob Widell Zetterström. The suggestion is that the bid is worth £2.5 million plus 50% in a sell-on clause. Now, I guess one detail we don't know is what that sell-on clause looks like. In fact, it might be €2.5 million looking at the conversion in this article. But what does that sell-on clause look like? Is that 50% of the fee, should they sell him on, or 50% of profit would be one interesting thing to consider. However, I think in the here and now, with this bid specifically, that's irrelevant, because my understanding is that Derby are not going to consider a bid at that low price. I mean, the profit that Derby are turning on that at that point. I mean, what they're signing for, 1.4 million, something like that. It's a good percentage, but it's not what they envisaged when he's gone and played at the World Cup, become Sweden's number one. And been one of the better goalkeepers in the Championship for the last couple of seasons. So I'd say that the reason this is interesting, €2.5 million, so £2.1 million, which would be 50% profit on the 1.4 million that Derby paid for him. The reason that this is interesting is, do they come back? What do they come back with? And that is something that it is going to need to be watched for. I mean, Ryan Conway has tweeted, if Leeds, Lyon, Frankfurt, Monza and others are interested, I can't conceive of a way we don't get a respectable fee for him. It's worth clarifying that whilst his contract's up come the end of this year as well, the club, I believe, do have an option to extend that. So that shouldn't bring the fee down too much in that respect, because, it's effectively a 2-year deal he's got left. The thing with Monza as well is, let's consider who they are.
Well, they got promoted, didn't they, last year? They came up from Serie B, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, so they have been up and down a little bit. They've had I think they had a spell already. They were sort of brainchild. They had a really big investment from Silvio Berlusconi. Remember him? AC Milan president and Italian prime minister on 3 occasions. So he was kind of the guy who owned them, was club president throughout a lot of those Champions League wins, your Maldini, Baresi type era. So they had a lot of investment. They were up previously. They went back down. They're back up now. They won the playoffs in Serie B last year. And I think, they are clearly an an ambitious club. So we have to consider that. And Chris, do you know who bought them from Berlusconi's estate, effectively, because it was being negotiated as he died, and then just after he died, do you know who came in?
I don't. Please tell.
Because there were rumours of Marinakis. From what I can see, that didn't come off, but it's a US-based investment firm. But yeah, you just think, if this is the sort of club that he was interested in, he sees something here, in a club that he thinks could be taken to the next level. It's a really desirable area. They've got some sporting interests, things like the Grand Prix. I'm not being funny, this American investment firm, to outbid Marinakis as well, have got to have money. So I think Derby could squeeze a lot more out of Monza if they wanted to, but they're in no position to have to sell, as much as in terms of the fees being thrown at them. Are they trying it on because they think Derby need money after the takeover collapsed? That would be my question.
I think this is one of two or three things. I think, for a start, Fabrizio Romano is renowned to be an agent's tickler as such. He'll get an agent on board. He's renowned for it. We've spoke about it in the past on podcasts. I've spoke to other journalists who have said the same, that Romano makes money from touting players around and getting the best deal for them. I think Monza are also probably putting this out there to show their fans that they indeed have intent to bring in a world-class goalkeeper within their squad, and shows the ambition potentially they have. I don't think that a team that came third in Serie B last year via the playoffs, who clearly will be one of the favourites, if not the favourite, to go down from Serie A, first half asking with a capacity of only 17,000 as well for their stadium. So it is literally everything that Zetterström has always said he wanted to achieve from Derby, and play in the Premier League in front of big crowds and have big support from his previous club where they were playing in front of 9, 10, 11,000. I don't see how this benefits him. If he wants to aspire to maintain his Sweden number one rank, which at the moment is his shirt to lose, let's be honest now, although his performance on Saturday is a lot to be decided, I don't think a move to Monza is the answer. And I don't think the Swedish eyes will turn around and approve of that, because yes, he's going to get a lot of practice, because the ball is going to be predominantly being fired at him rather than the other end of the pitch, of what I can see based on who they've signed and what their squad is. But I just think this is just Fabrizio Romano, Zetterström's agent, Serie A agents, just basically playing the game, just basically tickling the source, tickling the current market, just seeing if there's a bite. I'll be amazed, Jack. I don't know about you. I think that Derby's predicament of not having the takeover completed puts Zetterström's valuation down. I think if the takeover would have happened, I think Zetterström's position is strong and his value is stronger. I think now people look at the takeover being collapsing, and Derby may have to sell to increase their squad and strengthen their squad. The price for your asset goes down naturally. So I think this is a cheeky 2.5. A sell-on clause at 50%, Jack, is only good if your keeper is fit and healthy. You could go to Monza, play 9 games, break his leg, not be seen again for 2 years, and then what happens? Yeah,
as I say, I think going back to the lack of detail in that sell-on clause. Yes, one Twitter microblog 280 characters. You're not going to get loads of detail in there, but that again points to me to be a sort of, as you say, a little bit of a Hail Mary, a little bit of a nudge from an agent or somebody. I mean, let's remember that most of the reports surrounding Zetterström have come from Romano this summer as well. We have to consider that, who I, at this point, refuse to call a journalist. He's a transfer influencer. But it's,
You're right. He is an influencer.
he's a transfer influencer. Look at the stats he's got in with people like Florian Plettenberg in recent weeks. There's a Daily Mail investigation just gone out. That's not something you want as a journalist, or the journalist having to investigate you, is it? So I think you consider that. But as I say, the bottom line is, you're right, the value's probably gone down, not just because the takeover's fallen through, but because of the publicity that was around it. I do not believe that Derby are in a position where they have to take an offer like this. They are not going to take a £2.1 million offer. I mean, there will be lower mid-table Championship goalkeepers that go for that, if not more. And I think that would be incredibly short-sighted if Derby were to take this. If anything has come in and it's not just kind of publicity stunt, agent talk, paper talk, then I imagine Derby have left it out of the building. I think that's what's gone on at Pride Park today.
I agree with you, Jack. And to add to that, sorry to interrupt there. I think if you look at the business that's been done in the Championship, certainly this is Stoke has caused a big situation with their signing of the Swansea lad, his name, Galbraith.
Yeah.
10 million, and then you've got the likes of Bristol City and Middlesbrough throwing more cash at players that to an extent have been proven at this level, but haven't played in the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't established themselves as their country's number one, a country that fundamentally is going up the ranks. They've got a new manager in place. They had a difficult time to get to the World Cup. They should never have got there in theory, but through the Nations League playoffs and whatever, they got there and they did okay. So if we are going on comparison and we're going on the trend of valuations of transfers, 2.5 million euros is, I nearly swore there, but the second word is take. I think he'll still go for 8 to 10 million. I think there may be a clause on how that's paid and probably spread over the terms of his contract. But fundamentally, if we're taking on board the stance of where Galbraith is at 10 million, and you look at someone like Trafford in the Premier League who's gone for nigh on 30 million to Leeds. Now, don't get me wrong, Trafford is definitely the future of England, without doubt. But 2.5 million euros for a World Cup keeper who everyone was raving about, to offset that against someone who's just been picked up for 30 million in the Premier League. No, sorry, Fabrizio Romano, but you can keep your influence in well and truly in Italy.
Yeah, as I say, let's not tarnish journalists with that name when you look at the important journalism that's coming from people like Martin Ziegler at the moment, which is stopping things like the World Cup sell-off. What we see from Romano is the opposite end of the scale. But I'm done preaching about that because, as I said, it's the whole of the podcast and I could moan about it all day. But finally, Chris, let's just briefly talk about Cardiff, because I want to pick up on something you mentioned about Brian Barry Murphy and his possession-based style. And you were talking also earlier about Ben Wilkinson and him coming into Derby and what influence he has had. Now, do you know where Brian Barry Murphy came from? He was within the City Football Academy. I think he might have managed the under-21s before Ben Wilkinson.
I think you're right. I think he did.
He went. I'm sure he managed a CFA team in India. He was at Rochdale for a very short time, of course, as he tried to cut his teeth in English football before. But I just wonder whether there's a parallel to be drawn here. So is this possession-based style for Derby right now? Potentially Ben Wilkinson coming in, trying to have a bit more influence. Eustace has gone, I want to improve in possession because we couldn't win games with the majority of possession. Wilkinson's come in, it's going to take a bit of time to bed in and whatever. Is this, as you say, purely because Derby don't have the pace and power on the counter right now, and they found that this is the best thing to adapt to right now? I think that's the question. But the reason I bring it up is because Saturday, therefore, could be a bit of a battle of the same idea. Who can do it better? Who can translate the kind of City Football Academy principles to Championship football most effectively at Pride Park on Saturday afternoon? What I would hope is that Derby are better placed from what I've seen at Cardiff previously and the way they stuck with this style of play all throughout last season. And I'm sure we can hear more on this later in the week with a Cardiff preview that we'll have for you. I would hope Derby are better placed to adapt, to have to go against that and let Cardiff have the ball and be able to do things with less possession. You talked about Wrexham looking like like Derby have previously. I think what might potentially win Derby this game is being able to somehow, even if they've not really got the players for it right now, go back to some of those principles that have won them games against these sorts of teams before.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think Eustace has got to be brave here. I think he's going to have to go away from, he's got to unleash those harnesses that he put on the team. I honestly think that the team was too tight. It just didn't flow for me on Saturday. This is a different kettle of fish. You've got a Cardiff team who like possession. They are very patient. One thing I like about Cardiff and Brian Barry Murphy, they're a very patient side. I watched them a fair few times in League One, and they will not. They'll continue to apply pressure without necessarily going for the final penetration, unless it's definitely there. They won't force it. They'll just gently build. I thought Wrexham, of what I saw, were quite clever. They pressed in zone 2, so the ball a lot of the game stayed within sort of either box. So there was a big battle, and it was interesting. I'm looking forward to see, like Cardiff obviously had 2 brothers on the pitch at the same time, the Colwell brothers, and they both came on as substitutes, if I remember rightly, at the same time pretty much, and they changed the game. He realised that the Wrexham style of play was working. Look, I think you're right. I think John is going to have to tap into what he wants. I think of some of the stuff that we've seen online today, it's focusing on Clark, it's focusing on Mowat. Is he sort of telling us something that these two are going to be the focal point of the game on Saturday, and we're very much going to be all about dynamic possession? You know, the strength of the team is our spine. Our spine isn't there yet. There's various injuries that are preventing that. Is Schmodik's going to be back? He could be a big loss. But then again, we've got the likes of Bruce, who's got an extra week to build up. I still question the Eames situation. Are they saving him to go out on loan? This is a perfect, for me, energy was lacking at Derby, and he's a perfect foy for that. And then the question will be asked again, if Bill Beard doesn't get into the starting 11, Jack, or any minutes from the bench, what was the purpose of his signature? Is it another Hal Mine, who again has just disappeared? That's sort of been a gamble of a freebie. I just think there's more questions than answers. I think Cardiff will bring questions. I think Cardiff will want possession of the football. They don't know any different. So, yeah, it'll be a real interesting tactical battle from the touchline.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw some names out there before we finish that I think we might need in the team if we're going to be that bit more direct, and see if you agree. I think we might need Johnson at right back for more athleticism instead of Ward. I think we'll need somebody on that left wing who is more dynamic. Right now, I think that's probably Eames, but ideally, can Derby get a left winger in this week who can run in behind? I mean, maybe Blackett Taylor even. You know, because they need to be ready to catch Cardiff out on the transition. On the right, you play Ward up there, getting deep crosses and have Johnson overlap. I'm not sure that, you know, and this is where we don't really have the players. This again would be a great game for Derry Merkin, but he's going to be out for another few weeks now after getting injured in the under-21s warm-up. But I think in terms of working with what we've got, it's going to be some of those substitutes who came on too late on Saturday might be really important. So yeah, your direct runners, your Blackett Taylors, your Johnsons, people that are going to just look to get down the line. If Mowat can start and he can ping passes out to them, grand. They then need to be able to run and yeah, Mowat can launch a counter. They got on the end of it. Find a Morris or a Schmodix. Bingo. It's obviously not that simple. But if you've got Cardiff who wanted to knock it about and be cute with it, Derby might need to be ready to go a little bit more route one.
Agreed. And the final point on that, Jack, is we haven't got the legs in midfield to sustain a high press or have a chasing game. We saw Travis only go 83 minutes. Clark isn't renowned for that kind of energy. Mowat certainly isn't going to give you 90 minutes plus of pressing. So if Cardiff do go for that skill set and that style and that tactic of being a possession team, pinging the ball around, Derby need to be if they're going to play a low block, which I hope not, to be honest, I don't think it suits us, especially with the players we have at the moment. We're going to have to be very, very switched on. And at the moment, as we saw against Charlton, the one thing we are not is switched on.
Yeah, I think before we finish, I'm just going to pull up one more thing, and I'll have a used review from the first day of the season after this as well. But just for a little bit of perspective as well, let's just look back through Derby's opening results from the last 10 league seasons. I tweeted this on Saturday night. Lost the last 4 opening days, won 3, lost in 2020-21 and drew another 2. So in how many of those seasons where Derby have lost in recent, well, those last 3 years before this year that we've lost on the opening day, I'd say we've been happy with our finish in each season, right? It's a long season. I think you can say the same about the draw in what turned out to be the administration season, considering that, yes, we went down, but we would have been 17th. And equally, 2022-23, the first game under David Clowes, we won that. We didn't make the playoffs in League One. So, the first game is
Oxford.
Not the all and end all. Yes, Oxford indeed. Conor Hurahan on the score sheet, if I remember rightly that day. I don't know where I just plucked that from. But basically, things are not decided now, but there's a lot of work to do in the next 2 weeks, and we need to see some signs of progress against Cardiff at Pride Park on Saturday. Chris, thank you very much for your time this evening, mate. And I will see you, potentially later in the week, potentially next week.
Yeah, look forward to it, Jack. Like you said, there'll be a preview show coming up on Rams Reviewed, and hopefully, I think we're trying to get Tom from one of the real top Cardiff City podcasts. So it'll be really interesting, Jack, if you do that show, to get an insight of Cardiff's style and ambitions this year.
So for the final part of the podcast, I'm going to bring you all the latest from Derby County women, who got off to a far from ideal start up at Liverpool Feds on Sunday. Before that, though, I'm going to run you through some news that came out before the game. We've got a handful of signings, a new vice-captain, and a retirement as well. So let's start there with the new vice-captain. Anna Sparks, the defender, will be Emily Joyce's number 2 in terms of captaincy on the pitch, at least. And that retirement comes from another defender. Megan Tinsley played left back for Derby. She's been forced to retire after a number of injuries. So our best wishes go to Meg for whatever comes next. Okay, so the new news. Obviously, we brought you the news of Sam Sharrock's arrival previously. But we've got a couple of returnees. Eleanor Ashton and Dulcie O'Connor are both back. Ashton was with the U's on a dual registration from Manchester United and has been with Halifax last season. Dulcie O'Connor was on loan from Manchester City, and she, after that spell in the second half of the 23-24 season, went out to America. She's back now, and she got off to a flying start with Derby's goal. So that is a couple of FAWNL plate winners back in the squad. Also added to the ranks, goalkeeper Ash Naismith, who spent time last season with Loughborough Lightning, Aston Villa Academy graduate fullback Tasman Russell, and winger Maddie Norton, who was a teammate of Ashton's last season at Halifax. So on to the game on Sunday. It was a 5-1 defeat that left Sam Griffiths frustrated. 2 quick-fire second-half goals put the hosts in control after a tight first half. Hughes left chasing the game after really dominating that opening half hour. 10 minutes absolutely killed us in that game, Griffiths summarised. He thought that for 70 minutes the side were really good, and they did dominate the opening stages, as I say. Maddie Norton going close in her debut, but Georgia Walters hit a wonder strike for Feds in the 26th minute. Goalkeeper Lucy Jones, who made a series of brilliant saves throughout the match, really had no chance to stop that one. The Youths responded well, though. Emily Joyce and Becky May denied before O'Connor levelled on her second debut, played in one-on-one by Norton after an excellent body fake down the left. She fired lower cross goal to restore parity. As well as O'Connor, there were debuts for Sharrocks and Russell, as well as the second debut for Ashton. The remaining players that I mentioned previously did not feature on Sunday. After the break, Emma Johnson regained the lead for the hosts. That was a powerful finish before Jess Brady doubled the advantage from range. Ashton thought she'd given Derby a route back into the game just a minute after it was made 3-1. Her goal ruled out and the flag went up, though. Saren Carrington made it 4 with a looping finish over a packed box. That was in the second phase following a corner. And no substitutes, Layla Kennelly and Minnie Wilson went close with Derby. The visitors' push for a late goal cost them a 5th in the end. Madison Burgess made it 5 in stoppage time. So a poor start for the U's, albeit not a bad performance on the whole. It's just one of those games where a spell undoes all of the good work and leaves you chasing. They'll look to put that right when they host Rugby Borough on this Sunday. That's a 2:00 kickoff at the Vibrant Doors Arena, which is what the ground at Mickleover is now known as, of course, formerly Don Amos Arena. So if you fancy some football after Pride Park on Saturday, then why not come down to Mickleover on Sunday afternoon for the 2:00 kickoff? Hopefully, I will see you there. That's all that remains for this week's podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next week.